Hey, how's it going? Anamade here. And today I just want to show you something interesting about Artifact, right? That card game, that Valve made card game that did super amazing well. Okay, it didn't do very well. But that doesn't mean that it's not interesting under the hood. Now, I played a lot of Artifact, alright? I had a lot of fun with it. But that's not what we're doing. What I'm going to be doing here is we're going to be taking a look under the hood, literally. So these two things right here, these are the pack.dir files. So, Source 2, which is the engine that Artifact runs on, stores all of its game content inside of these VPK files. So what I have here is essentially the main directories of the game. So this includes the scripts, the models, materials, the sounds, etc. It's twofold. One, it makes things very easy to manage and download, and two, it compresses, so VPKs are compressed. So this VPK on the left is the current release version of Artifact, and this one over here on the right is day one. So this is the day one release of Artifact, and this is the, the today release. There's not a lot of differences, so there's not a lot to go over there. Now, how do you take a look at all of these files? You know, like if we go into models and make props gameplay, how can we take a look at Artifact shop card panels write.vmdl_c? There's not a program for that. However, what you can do is you can use the Dota 2 toolset to essentially take all these VMDLs and, vSounds and VMATs and VTexes, and you can put them inside of a Dota 2 add-on. Now, of course, none of these assets are going to be loaded natively, and because of that, none of them are going to work, they're not going to work as intended, since they're not running natively on Artifact, but we can take a look at the files. Now, here's something really interesting, right? Here's what caught my eye. If you look in here, and in here as well, you'll see that there's a folder called Elements. Now, if you know about the source Filmmaker, you know that Elements is specifically the project directory. If we take a look in Elements and then we go to Sessions, you can see that right here we have DMXs. Now, if you don't know what a DMX is, it's sort of like a multi-purpose file. Alright, you can use them to store, model data, for instance. However, one of the more useful applications of a DMX is that you can store source Filmmaker sessions on them. And that's exactly what these are. So we'll get into that in a second, but let's take a look at the content real quick. So here you can see that I have the content all loaded up in Dota 2. As you can see, it's not exactly the most stable. Obviously there's some dev content, like some grids. We can keep scrolling. So you'll see that some of the stuff is showing up as like red checkerboard, like red like this. Now this error right here, this essentially means bad shaders. So what's going on is that this material is using a shader that Dota 2 doesn't support. See, Artifact does use the default Dota 2 shader, but it also uses some brand new shaders too. And so anything that uses the newer shaders is going to show up as red like this. And same for this as well. So right now we're taking a look at the VMATs. So these are just the material files. Okay, so you'll see right here, like a card image, this doesn't look very familiar. This isn't in the final game. Now this right here, this sort of low resolution Drow Ranger, I wonder if I can get a better view of this. Okay, I can't really. Because it's the VMAT. So you'll notice right here that this Drow Ranger, it's not the same artwork as in the final game. I feel like this is probably some placeholder art just because of how low quality it is. It's probably just some Dota 2 artwork. I don't know. I don't recognize it. So let's keep scrolling. Oh, so here's something really interesting. Check this out. This looks like an old Axe card. And also sort of an old card design as well. Now, for some reason, he has 88 attack, 88 defense, and 88 health. Obviously, this is just a placeholder card. So the axe is probably just where the artwork goes. My guess is that this is sort of an old design of the card layout. So, you know, the hero card would just sort of have everything listed out sort of like this, with a little Dota icon in the top left, and then, you know, Axe, the Berserker of the Red Mist. You know, that's very Dota-like. Here you can see, let's see, what is this called? Card Tower Panorama. So this is like the tower health and mana. Again, like this and also like the Axe card and the Drow art. This seems to me like these are game placeholders. So, you know, before the game was getting detailing, it seems like these are the assets that were being used in their place. DCG grass. So here's some nice grass, you know, if you're a big fan of grass. Now, obviously, the fact that it's showing up in the viewport means that this grass is using the Dota 2 shader. Now, all of these are particle textures. Here you can see that essentially a lot of the in-game assets are handled as VMATs. And something that's very interesting about how Artifact seems to work, based on what I've looked at, the way that Artifact works, is that it's almost not really a Source 2 game, as much as it is a panorama game. Panorama is sort of like the UI system, and you see it in Dota 2 or CSGO, you know. It drives like the main menus. In Artifact, it actually seems that Panorama is sort of a much larger role, and that it's actually in charge of like a lot of these things. Like these VMATs, the V textures, the card art, and stuff like that. So that's very interesting. I don't know if that's true or not, right? I'm just speculating based on what I know about how the game works. Here, you can check this out. It's not easy to see. I'll probably have to zoom that in post. But again, this is another like little beta card. And also a different design from the last one. So this one is... can I zoom in? I can't zoom in. So this card right here is Bristleback. And, you know, 812. So Bristleback in this like beta design is an 812. Now in the released game, Bristleback is still an 812. So this card is not far off. However, he doesn't have his special ability listed on the card, which is where when he gets a hero kill, he gets 2 armor. That's not listed here. It's hard for me to pinpoint which ones of these effects are like in the final game and which ones aren't. Hey look, here's Magnus. So here's sort of a little more, this is more closer to how the final card looks. It's just a little bit different, but more or less that is sort of how Magnus how he looks on the game board. You have like a hero card, but you also have the game board version. So this is the game board version of Magnus. Oh, ain't that interesting? There's some skies in here, a tintable sky. So I guess that this is very interesting that Artifact has sky textures. The reason this is interesting is that maybe at some point Artifact took place outside. Maybe there was sunlight or maybe a window or something. Yeah, let's just keep speculating. Also, I like that it says sky tintable and it's like a black and white grayscale sky. That kind of makes me think that these sky textures at some point were like tinted. Or maybe they had like a control parameter to tint them specifically. Which maybe it means that, you know... Hey, here's some speculation. Maybe at some point, like the time of day when you played Artifact would match your system clock or something. Now that would be cool. So now we get down to the models. You can see that like, you know, a lot of the models, they're gonna be like this. And as I said earlier, this is a broken shader issue. So like, you know, here's a hero card. And as you can see, like, you know, the little details of like the item slots, they do bulge out. Now again, because the shaders can't work in the Dota 2 client, we can't actually see these. We can, however, load the models, we can see the model geometry, and we can see their animations too. Like this, see? This right here is the Dire Melee Creep movie. What does that mean? Movie? Wait a minute, is this an animation from the trailer? I think that's what this is. I think this is an animation that they made for the cinematic trailer or something. Maybe as part of like the Annihilation scene. You know. Maybe I should open this up. Alright, Dire Creep... Okay, yep, right here. Okay, so this... Okay, check this out. This is cool. So this card breaking animation right here is actually this part of the artifact trailer. Check it out. Check out the this creep right here. Check it out. Watch. Right here. See? That animation from the trailer is this one. So this dire melee creep movie, this is actually the prop that was used in the trailer cinematic. So that's cool. What else can we see? Here's an item card movie. Let's see. So that's very interesting. Here's the artifact logo. Probably also from the trailer, but also maybe it's in game somewhere too. So now we're sort of getting into weirdo territory. Like, I don't know what some of these are. DCG board right, bot, left top, top bot. So it seems to me that judging from like these, like board pieces, that the board in the game actually consists of like, let's see, like a bot, like left. So it seems from looking at these board pieces that the artifact board itself actually consists of 4 pieces. So like for the left board, it's left, left bot, left top, and left top bot. So here's the imp, here's another imp, and another imp, some sick bugs. What? Okay, here's something interesting. There's a Roshan statue in the game files, and he seems static. I don't know if he might have any bones in him, or any rigging. So here we have Roshan static, which is just a static Roshan, and over here we have Roshan ghost. This is quite interesting. Let's see. 1, because he's rigged, and 2, because he seems to have animations too. Okay, so check this out. This is some real cut content here. So first up, we have something called Roshan Ghost, and then Roshan Static. So there's some Roshan models in Artifact. Now that's not the only interesting thing here. First off, this Roshan Ghost is rigged, so he has bone rigging going on here. And if we take a look, he also has an animation, or rather a script-generated sequence. And what we see is that it's called Roshan Ghost Time of Triumph. So this is very interesting. There's a ghost Roshan head with a little animation in it, and it's kind of, and this is not in the final, this isn't in the released game. You know, this animation doesn't show up anywhere, and it doesn't show up in Time of Triumph either. This could have been like part of like a UI, or you know, maybe before Call to Arms they were calling it Time of Triumph or something. You can really just speculate, honestly. I mean, check it out. I mean, it's quite a lot of frames. So check this out. This is very interesting. So right here we have something called Routed Soldier, and then we have Routed Tresden. So whenever you play the card Routed, there's like a bunch of ghosts that run through your frame. That's exactly what these two things are. So, you know, it's obviously like a charge led by Tresden. And what I found very interesting is that, you know, usually you don't usually get a good view of what's going on. But this Routed Soldier, it's Dragon Knight. Yeah. So it turns out Tresden is just going to battle with Dragon Knight. That's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, see? That's Dragon Knight's shield. And, that sword is creepy. There's an eye on the sword. Yeah, this model was obviously not made to be looked at this closely or this long, because he literally just runs through your frame. So right here, you can see an old version of the shop. So something like this is always very nice to find. As we come down, math clock. What is this? So this is just called math_clock. Play mat. I don't know what these are. I have a feeling these models are probably very functional. Here's player coin. You have any animations? Okay, yeah. So here's the coin itself. And you might be surprised at just how detailed this mesh is. This is just a little coin that you click on, you know, to pass your turn. So here's something interesting. This model here is called playmat02.vmdl. Now, I'm not too sure what this is. Maybe it's like an early version of the playing mat. Because there is like 3 blocks. Maybe that's the 3 lanes. But it could be something totally different too. You know, it could just be an early like remnant of the debugging process. Okay, here's something interesting. This right here is the prototype cart. So I believe this is some remnant of like probably like I remember some of the early screenshots for Artifact kind of had like they had this cart thing in them where it was sort of like a cart next to like a big tree. I think that's what this is. Now, Artifact isn't very much when you look at the models and materials, but it is when you start looking at the particles, because this is where a lot of the magic happens. Oh! Ow! Ow! That was my ears. Okay, these are loud. If you ever decide to do this, you see this little box over here that says live? Tick this off. Now, remember what I said about how sounds are sort of baked into the animations of the models? It's also baked into the particle systems as well. So when you click on a particle system, it plays a sound. And in the case of like these, like... So it turns out that these particle systems here, they have the prefix SND, like sound. You know, SND, Mist of Avernus, MSMD, multicast. So these systems here are just for playing sounds. So, you know, if you set this to live, you're going to get an earful, so don't do that. I wouldn't be able to identify which particles are like unused versus used. That would take someone with like a really critical eye. Oh, that's nice. Little card getting ripped up. Some of these particles are incredibly static, like this one. Again, some of these PCFs, they're not even like the full system. Some of these are actually just children of like a much more important system. You know, a lot like how it works in Source. But in Source 2, the children of the particle systems are more universal, so they're also treated as like their own systems. Here's a big error. This error is so error that even the texture of the error isn't right. That's just how this error is. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that these Roshans are sort of a remnant of an old Time of Triumph animation. Even this one, like this static right here, it's hard to say. So what it seems to me is that when Valve was sort of designing and animating this game, a lot of what they did was they, you know, made sequence, and then, so what they did was they would make, you know, smaller sequences, and then they would compound those sequences into sequences of sequences, you know, a model sequence, a sound sequence, and then a lot of it would be conglomerated into these, you know, particle files, essentially. And so a lot of the game is these PCF files sort of operating in the game world. A frog! Look at this! What? What am I looking at? What is this? A frog? A moth old? Oh. Okay, so these are just moths. So these are like ambient effects. Are they using this moth? So, shout out to Woozles, if you're watching this. Turns out there are some sick frogs. Check that out. So, normally in Dota, something like this might indicate hex, I guess? And there's not... Is there a hex? I don't remember if there's a hex. That's what I think this is supposed to be. This frog.pcf. I don't know. What are you? You're nothing. So here's the campfire. So, you know, the campfire that's sort of on the main menu screen. Here are the fire effects for that. And these are pretty nice. Check that out. These are some pretty cool particle effects. You know, as someone who uses the SFM a lot, like, I could definitely get some use out of these. Like, especially, like, you know, good, like, fire effects that look good from, like, the side. Dota 2 doesn't have very many of these. So the fact that Artifact has a bunch is kind of cool. Now, if you didn't know, Artifact consists of a lot of voice acting. So if you ever want like the raw voice acting effects, Artifact consists of a lot of voice acting. So Artifact consists of lots and lots of voice acting. There's a lot of voice work in this game. But it all works in Dota 2. So if you ever do just want like the raw like voice files, all you need to do is go into the VPK file and extract the V sounds and put those V sounds inside of Dota 2, and then you can open and play them in Dota 2. And then you can use like the SFM, for instance, to export them to your needs. So you know what? That's cool and all. But let's get into something that's really, really interesting. Right? Something more interesting than just looking at the content files. So check this out. I mentioned this at the beginning, but in the VPK for Artifact, you'll see that there's a folder called Elements. Now, if you're a Source Filmmaker user, you know that Elements is essentially your session directory. So if we click and we go into this, see, Sessions, these right here, these are session DMXs. So Valve actually left these in the game. So this indicates two things to me. One, it tells me that they should probably clean these out, because these are the actual session files that I'm assuming they used probably for the trailer. Or for something else. I don't know. I don't think so, because there's only one animation in here, and it doesn't even work properly. So it seems to me like all of the trailer sessions are not in here, and that these are actually unrelated. However, what this tells me is that Artifact actually has an SFM, right? So if you don't know how, like, sort of generally how Source 2 works with this sort of thing, so you sort of have like a Source 2 game, but you also have a launch mode called Tools, so you can launch with the parameter added on -tools, and what that will do is that will launch it with sort of the, you know, like this Dota 2 tools. Like this, what I'm using right here, this is Dota 2 launched with the -tools. Now what that means is that I get access to all of these tools, you know, the asset browser, I get Hammer, I get materials, models and particles editing, but you also get the SFM. What this means is that Artifact does have a working tools mode in-house at Valve, and that is what they were using when they made the Artifact trailer. None of these were ever really intended to be looked at. So let's take a look at them. Let's see what Valve left behind for us to sort of dig through. So they all say previs, back, you know, previs. So I'm not sure what exactly these are, but we can definitely take a look at them and, you know, see what's going on underneath. Now, we can try to open these DMXs. Let's see how that goes. So here I have all of the DMXs sort of loaded in here. So, you know, trailer animation, so the shot1 destruction2.dmx in the trailer. If we try to open this one, it was not open because there was an error reading the file. So we can't look at this. But the other sessions work just fine. So let's check out previous back.dmx and check that out. It turns out that these session files are fully working. They actually do load in the Dota 2 SFM, which tells me another thing. It tells me that the Artifact SFM and the Dota 2 SFM, they're practically the same. Now, if you're wondering why everything here is an error, that's because all of the models are missing. So obviously when Valve was making, you know, these sessions, they had sort of like a, you know, they had their own models for these scenes. But they didn't release any of those models, so all we're going to have is these errors. You know, for instance, like prototype card windowed horizontal 6. Now what's very interesting here is that these are animated. So check that out. You can see some like little flash and missing particles. If you're wondering, these like little flashes of X's right here. This is an indicator that a particle file is missing. So, you know, lots of stuff is missing from these files. It looks like it's a missing model. It's like some kind of combination of two things. And the imp here isn't even animated. What are you doing, boy? So, even though I can't load the model, SFM does keep track of the skeleton data. You know, like the rig and skeleton data. So we can actually take a look at the raw animations. See? Like, here's the animation curves right here. Let's take a look if there's any keyframing here. So I'm going to select everything, and... no. What the heck? So there's... yeah. You know, it really is kind of hard to make out what exactly is going on here, because everything is errors. But I have a good theory. I believe that these right here are actually game animations. So the way that sort of the camera is sort of pointed and aiming, it seems to me that like these errors here, these are the board, you know, like the actual play board. And then all of these other errors that are sort of intercepting it, yeah, see? Oh, what is this? Check it out. I found a hidden thing. I found a hidden thing. Hold on, where are you? I can't get it. I found a hidden thing. Wait, what? So check that out. This is some boundary break right here. It's a little arrow. Well, it's a little frustrum with an arrow sticking out of it. What does that mean? I don't know. But I have a theory. So what I think is going on here is that these sessions, all of these sessions, are these are game recordings, is what these are. Now here's a one with lighting on it. So check this out. This is some Valve lighting setups right here. See? This is canned light 2. Here's light 6. Here's imp 2 backlight and radiant base light. So obviously they do, yes, Valve does categorize their lighting. So as you can see, these last couple of sections that we've been looking at, it seems like they're the same thing, but iterated over and over and over again. Which makes a lot of sense when we take a look at the names. See? Previs base, 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 assembled, 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 creeps, creeps, creeps. Spawn zombie, previous turn imp, map, previous inspect, kill tower, enemy. So yeah, you can see, so I don't really have a clue of what this previs means, but this base stuff definitely seems to refer to like base animations or base recording. My guess is that these DMX files were maybe used to set up the scenes in the trailer, which is why like this one has more lighting on it. In that case, let's open up this one, latest lighting 3 lanes color change, which seems like the latest addition here. Maybe there's a way I can extrapolate that? So from what I can tell, this right here is sort of the latest version of like the Previs base settings. And you can kind of see that evidenced here because there's way more errors and everything is more organized. So, you know, you can see that Valve is very organized with how they divvy up these things, you know. And here we can see that they actually have lighting with all the candles and then light here, which is just light 8. Oh, and check that out. This light 8, hold on, let me take a look. Let me verify my suspicion. What? Oh, I'm a little confused. Why is this light long? It's acting like an Uber light. That's kind of weird. Is there some setting here I don't know about? Roundness? No. Oh! So check that out. As you can see, Valve is very precise with how they do their lighting. No FOV is wasted here. You can see that, you see normally the vertical FOV would be like up here with the horizontal, but what they did was they lowered the vertical FOV because they optimized the lighting setup to exactly what was on screen. This does a few things. It does a few things. It optimizes like frame rates, obviously, which is kind of weird because it's SFM and frame rate doesn't matter too much. But more importantly, it actually optimizes the shadow map resolution. So, you know, the way that lights work in SFM is they project a texture, and then they calculate the shadows per pixel of the texture. So if you optimize your light like this, you can actually see the light frustum here. It looks like a rectangle. They're using a smaller frustum, which means that there's less wasted pixels in the projected texture calculations, which means that the shadows are going to be higher definition, obviously with smoothing and everything afterwards. So it makes a big deal. And it is very interesting to see that even for something like this, Valve does prefer to optimize the pixel density of their lighting in SFM. That's not something even I do, so there you go. I can't be super snooty about it. So if you're taking a look here, you can kind of see that there's some imps in here. Now these imp models, I actually do have them, but I don't have the textures. They're a little messed up. So if you're wondering why the imp looks so, you know, jank like that, that's because the imp model between when this session was made and the current imp model in Artifact was made, they're different, right? So the new imp model is sort of messing up right here. So you can kind of see that there's like some weird like abominations of nature in here. Oh my goodness gracious. What are those? Those are kind of terrifying. It also seems like they might be using some old animations too. Like, check out how they sit down. Like, what? Like, they don't have like an idle animation. They just sort of like go and then they sit. I don't... What is that? That looks crazy. Look at this. This actually is something I can fix though. Check this out. So all you have to do is select the imp, then right click on him, go to utilities, and then reattach to model. Check it out. I just fixed the imp. And no, that is not a beta animation. That is the normal default animation. And you can actually see that now that I've fixed the imp, you know, it looks totally normal. Minus the fact that he's covered in red faces because his shader is totally broken. So, you know, we can forgive him for that, right? For the most part, though, these previous session DMXs don't really contain much. I mean, a lot of them are just sort of like errors and errors. Maybe you get some sick wireframes or some, you know, flying red X's. But honestly, you know, there's no way that I could honestly, like, take a look at what these are and, like, you know, really analyze them. I can, however, take a look over here, and you can see that there's, like, these are very interesting, this player and opponent right here. This is more sort of like evidence that I think that these are actually game recordings. Because I have a feeling that these two animation sets... Let's take a look, see it. It's a model. Take a look at the animation set. I have a feeling that these right here... What? Okay, I'm a little confused. So it seems to me that, like, player and opponent, these right here might actually sort of be, like, sort of grouping. These right here might actually be more like grouping entities, so to speak. And, you know, in the recording process, the SFM picked these up and then treated them as if they were models with their own rigging, when they were probably just being used to sort of drive game animation. It's hard to say, though, and honestly, it's all just speculation. I don't actually know what it does, but that's my best guess. If we keep looking here, you see lots of SFM stuff. You see instances. What? Instance? Wait, how? What? Okay, so this looks pretty dumb. If you don't understand what this means, it means that this particle called base item attachment glow. So they made an instance of it, and then they made an instance of the instance, and then they made an instance of that instance, and then they made an instance of that instance. So this poor particle was instanced like 4 times. If you don't know what that means, you can instance particles in the SFM, and it essentially makes a copy of the particle system so that you can edit it for your scene. without messing up the original particle. That's what these are for. Although normally you don't need to use 4. I would not quite advise this. This is incredibly interesting to me. And the reason that it's incredibly interesting is that you really are sort of digging. This really is like digging into the data and sort of seeing sort of the remnants left behind by the developers. I hope you actually enjoyed this, and that maybe you learned something interesting too by watching me just kerfuffle around with all the artifact files and explore these mysterious DMX files, which really aren't much. But here we go. At the end of the day, this big conglomerate of errors is probably a pretty good representation of the legacy that Artifact has left behind. The game obviously, now jokes aside, the game obviously isn't doing that well. And personally, I kind of feel bad about that because I actually really liked the game. So it's sad to see that it never really worked out. But I'm glad that there's something to get out of it, and if you're a Dota 2 short film contest creator, I'm sure you can make great use of the voice lines. I hope you enjoyed this little dissection of Artifact. And, you know, it wasn't very thorough, but maybe it was enjoyable.